when you subscribe. Next up, it is Josh Bernstein. He is into a lot of different topics, and I want to get an update from him today. Josh, welcome to the program.
It's great to be on the program with you.
You're not on X. Is that a statement of some type?
No, actually, I am on X at Preserving Liberty, but I've been one of the more censored people the last 4 years. So sadly, I had to use a different type of name on X. But you can find me there. You can find me on Truth Social and Getter and a couple of others. And of course, my website, which is jbushow.com, as you can see behind me.
What got you censored that we now know to be just simply axiomatically true?
Well, that would take up the majority of our segment, but I'll give you the skinny on it. I exposed Ilhan Omar, Ilhan Noor Saeed Almi, where she came from, how she came to America. And long story short, she didn't like that too much. So within about a 48-hour period, I was pretty much ghosted. They attacked my Amazon Prime show. They attacked my Roku television show. They attacked YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you name it, all of it, even LinkedIn. I finally got my LinkedIn account back only about a week ago. So it's been a rough ride, but I'm here on the other side, and I wrote my first book, and I'm looking forward to Brendan Carr changing some of the rules, hopefully, when it comes to censorship in this country.
Yeah, that certainly would be, the fact that we even have to say that is so odd to me. I mean, the First Amendment has been under attack. I can't get my head around it. It's so contrary to every principle I thought we lived by.
Put it this way, we are in America, and for me to speak freely the past 4 years, I have to rely on a full 24/7, 365 security team in another country. Let that set in for a second.
In other words, I'm a little confused. You had personal security issues or security to make sure your material stays out there?
For my website, I've got 14 levels of security on my website. I've exposed judges, organizations on the left, on the right, as an investigative journalist for well over 12 plus years. And, I'm just not going to be invited to any of the, cocktail parties in DC in the swamp anytime soon. But hopefully that swamp is going to get cleared out here pretty soon. So we'll see.
One of the sort of thought bubbles over my head throughout this whole fiasco has been, what happened to journalism? What happened to journalists? It's really odd, and they don't seem to be backing away from their whatever this new ethos is.
Yeah, I talk about it in my book in chapter 10. I came up with a Truth in Media Act. And, the bottom line is these prevaricators, these saboteurs, these prostitutes, as I like to call them, they will say anything just for a story. If it leads, it bleeds. It doesn't matter whether it's true, and they never do any retraction. So if we had a universally adopted and approved way to hold, I think, these journalists accountable, I think that would be great. I know that the new Voice of America director, Carrie Lake, has said that she's going to look into possibly some of the FCC licenses for a lot of these people that, are just spewing and pushing garbage that is not true or accurate.
Right. So let's drill on that a little bit, because you're not saying infringe on their First Amendment privilege to say what they believe. You're wanting them to be held to the contract that they have to have the airways, the access to the airways that they do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, it's a pretty big responsibility to be able to report the news. And if you are not telling people the full truth, or you're leaving details out, or you're selectively editing, or whatever it is that you may be doing because you have an agenda, then that's not reporting the news. That's becoming a propagandist. And I think those folks need to be held accountable for that. Now, I'm not a big government guy, nor do I talk about that in my book at all. But I think there needs to be a universally approved and agreed upon almost ethics, if you will, ethics for journalism in general. We need to bring integrity back to journalism. People like yourself, like me, many others in alternative media, we don't have an agenda. The only agenda we have is to the truth. And wherever that truth
Right.
may lie, may be on the left, may right, or in the middle.
And I'm not a journalist. I'm just somebody, and I have a certain professional training and experience clinically, but I've been in media a long time. I know how to use media, and I think the truth has been in short supply. So I'm trying to ascend to it. And people lie and distort to me, and my job is to deliver it to the audience and let them decide for themselves. Speaking of distortions, I believe you've been speaking lately about the situation in Romania. I don't think people are. Well, no, but I don't think it's being reported on. Let me. I think you're talking about this. At least my producer said that that's something on your radar. My understanding of what has happened is that we have once again, sort of, I don't know, put our finger on the scales in the elections in Romania, because NATO wants to build a giant base on the Black Sea right across from the Crimea, which seems like Ukraine too to me. This seems like we're doing the same thing we did that triggered the whole Ukrainian crisis. And I don't hear that being reported anywhere. Do you? Do you see it reported? And am I getting this right?
I haven't been the one that's been talking about it, but I can comment on it. I mean, clearly, look, Russia, again, when they invaded, Crimea in 2014, then Barack Obama said, well, if you go into Crimea, there'll be a red line. And of course they did, and it might have well have been a chorus line because there was nothing that was done about it. But let's not forget that in this current conflict, Ukraine are the aggressors, number one. They are the ones that have the biosafety labs all over Europe. They are the most corrupt country in Western Europe. They want to join NATO. Of course, Vladimir Putin does not want a NATO-endorsed country that close to his borders, so he's pushing back against it. But look, the bottom line is President Trump needs to end this war. One of the things that I think has switched, possibly with Democrats and Republicans, is that Republicans are now the ones that don't want to get into these global conflicts. We want to be more protectionist, and we don't want to do nation building around the globe. Certainly, we have to have troops in certain areas and hot spots, of course, in South Korea and other places on the Korean peninsula, the Asian peninsula, just to keep things copacetic and keep everybody in check. But we certainly don't have to do nation building. And I think that's been a big change, a sea change, if you will, between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. But the bottom line is Ukraine is a disaster. What's that?
Theory why that happened? It's so bizarre.
Yeah.
That left to right shift.
Yeah, I could clearly see that the left has been talking to themselves and not real voters in the country, number one. Number two, you've got the military-industrial complex. You've got the Raytheons. You've got all these different organizations that are making tons of money. I mean, there's money in war, let's face it. And as the great George Carlin once said, Americans, are in a war typically about every 25 years if you look at history. And we need to stop that. There's no reason for it. I mean, look at the absolute horrific pullout in Afghanistan, or as I call it now, Talibanistan, because that was an absolute disaster. So again, we're seeing it repeat. They're spending all of our money, all of our capital, and they're giving it to a country that is obviously losing the war completely. And all it's doing is exacerbating, God forbid, a possible nuclear proliferation against the United States and its allies. So I'm really excited that President Trump eventually here is going to get back in office and take care of these things, and no more foreign wars.
I wonder if you have any opinion about this whole drone thing that's been going on.
Thank God you asked.
I figured I was on your behalf, Susan. But my fundamental feeling about it is, my God, we're at a place where I don't believe anything our government says. I don't believe anything that's on the press. When I see Mayorkas sit up there and say, "Oh, there's nothing to see here. It's all a mass hysteria," or I don't know what he's alleging even, but there's nothing. I just get disgusted. I don't know what to even think. What do you think's going on?
Well, I think it can really only be one of two things, and possibly both. I think it's either Iranian intelligence and Chinese intelligence, or worse, both of them. Let's not forget that many years ago, Iran shot down one of our drones, and they were able to collect the wreckage and then, reverse engineer the technology. So there's no question that they were able to do that. And what if they were able to enhance it? We're hearing stories about these drones being spotted and then disappearing, or even cars slowing down when they're in the vicinity of these drones. So who knows what's going on? But the Chinese, of course, let's not forget, with their balloons all over the United States, traversing our military installations, looking at our land and everything else. I talk about that. The China Syndrome is the chapter in Bold and Brave Solutions to Save America and Create Permanent Freedom, Preserving Liberty, my book. And so I think that it's probably the two of them working together. But let me just give this warning to President Trump and his people. I would be very, very careful about the inauguration. I think that the inauguration ought to go inside in a secure military facility. Do the swearing in early with a witness. John G. Roberts obviously does that. And then from that point, I would then immediately order the military, once he's sworn in, to shoot down these drones and get them out of the sky, because I'm very worried that him at the Washington Monument outside at this inauguration, and not just him, his entire cabinet would be there as well. If God forbid that these drones did some type of operation or strike against him, I mean, you could wipe out the entire cabinet, not just him, all of MAGA in one shot. So I would tell President Trump to be very, very cognizant of that and be very careful. And we will pray for his safety and, of course, his entire cabinet's safety for the inauguration.
It just seems to me that if they were actually enemy crafts, wouldn't they attempt to shoot them out of this? Wouldn't there be, wouldn't you see military aircraft from our country checking it out?
The scary part is
Wait,
that
Susan, hang on a second, Josh.
Hang on, China.
Hang on, Josh. Susan's way into this.
Explain it. It has to be China. Okay, that's what I always say. Anyways, keep going, Josh.
Yeah, I think she's correct. It more than likely is China or Iran or possibly both of them working together. I think right now this is reconnaissance. If you want to know the truth, I think they're looking at the landscape, where the buildings are located and all that, and this could be a dry run. The scary part is that I believe that our government absolutely 100% knows where these drones are from, who's operating these drones, and what their possible mission might be, and yet they're not doing anything about it because I'll say it publicly, I think they possibly could be complicit in it.
Ooh.
Of course.
Describe more what you mean there.
Well, look, I mean, this government has tried to impeach this president. That didn't work. They have tried to assassinate this president, or people around this president have tried to do that. That hasn't worked. They have tried to frame this president. They have tried to do everything. And I just can't sit here with a straight face and think for the life of me that they're really, truly interested in a peaceful transition of power. My God, I hope they are. I hope and pray they are. But again, why are these drones? This is not one or two drones. These are not Radio Shack, whatever you call it. I'm trying to think of the store, Best Buy. These are not those types of drones. These are drones the size, as Sean Hannity pointed out a couple of days ago, the size of dining room tables or possibly even small SUVs. I mean, these are major drones. So they've got to be military types of drones. And so if they are, why aren't they being stopped? Why are instead Mayorkas pushing over to the states saying, hey, why don't you do something about it? Why don't you shoot them down? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Instead of the government doing it. So I would be very leery of this government on the way out. They are doing some horrific things. 8,000 plus pardons. That is 4 times more than anyone else in U.S. history has ever pardoned people. So they're doing some crazy things, selling off our border wall for pennies on the dollar. They're evil. They're just evil, and I'll say it.
I'm hoping that most of those thousands were just sort of BS cannabis, offenses that stuck people in prison for long periods of time. But I don't know who this is yet, and I'm worried about it. The other thing, did you see Kash Patel talking about having reviewed the Kennedy assassination file and the 9/11 file, and saying that there's certain things in there that, for reasons he was very circumspect about, obscure, that we will never be, we can't release, and that everything that is known is already out there, essentially. And that 9/11, when you see that, it will piss people off. I didn't know what that meant. I wonder what your thoughts were on all those comments.
Yeah, I did see that. He was having a discussion with Glenn Beck at the time, and Glenn Beck asked him, so tell us about the JFK papers. And he basically just kind of said, look, what we basically already know is really what's out there. There's not too much else besides that. But as he did mention, there is some information pertaining to 9/11. My guess is it's probably having to do with Able Danger, the secret program at that time. And let's not forget that 9/11 was able to happen because of Bill Clinton and Jamie Gorelick putting up a wall between the different intelligence agencies. So maybe we'll find out more why they allowed 9/11 to happen.
They put up a wall in terms of sharing of information?
Sharing of information between the FBI, the CIA, the NSA. Why they did that, I have no idea, but they did do that. And a lot of the...
Look, it might have been, I could see it having been benign intent. Like they probably looked at the securities apparatus and said, it's getting out of control. Let's try to isolate them in different camps so they can't gang up on everybody. To me, it could... Bill Clinton was a very smart dude. I can't imagine him doing stuff that was dumb. It sounds dumb if you think of it on the foreign adversary scale. It sounds sort of smart from the standpoint of containing this thing that has spiraled out of control since then.
Yeah, well, think of it this way. I mean, if you knew that there were people that were wanting to take flight lessons but not wanting to learn how to land, perhaps that might have been a red flag. I don't know.
Yeah, just maybe.
Just maybe.
Well, what is on your radar presently? What is worrying you these days? What is on your
first and foremost,
in your crosshairs?
Yeah, I would say the first thing the next hurdle we have to get over, I would say, would be the inauguration. I just hope and pray that nothing goes down on the inauguration. I think, again, until we figure out where these drones are coming from, who's operating these drones, and what's their purpose or mission, I believe that President Trump would probably be smart to do some type of inauguration inside of a secure building, a military building, rather than being on the outside. But other than that, preserving liberty, bold and brave solutions to save America and create permanent freedom. It's about 150 pages. It's a pretty easy read. This is the type of book that you'll want to read with a yellow highlighter in your hand. It's been endorsed by 2 New York Times bestselling authors, and the foreword was written by a good buddy of mine and a sitting member of the U.S. Congress. So I'm excited and I'm proud of it. I basically talk about lots of different things that are problems, but I don't just talk about the problems. I talk about different types of solutions and how we can solve a lot of the issues that we face.
Yeah, I'm just so pleased that reality is coming to bear. The common sense is coming back. Problem solving is coming back. It's like we're not. I don't know. We're in reality. We're back in the awakened from a delusional mass formation, awakened from sort of this weird preoccupation and fear of God knows what, of everything. But I'm glad to see that reality is reasserting itself. I would have predicted that it always will, but it was getting weird where I was starting to worry about it. Josh, thank you for going ahead and make a finished comment, and we'll wrap this up.
Yeah, just as far as talking about RFK Jr., I know that they were talking to him today and grilling him today in Washington, but he can be the most consequential Kennedy almost in history, other than maybe, his uncle JFK, if he's able to transform our public health, our water supply, stop running ads on television and radio for pharmaceuticals and things like that. There's only 2 countries in the entire world, New Zealand and the United States, that allow that type of advertising. So that needs to stop. And then, of course, I think we need to hold these people accountable for what they have done, for the lies that they have spewed, and, for the censorship, for the mandates, for so many different things. I talk about it in my book, and I do chapter 7. I talk about lab leak versus natural origins. And clearly you can tell 100%. I use their own emails against them that indeed it was a lab leak. Whether it was malicious or not, I guess we'll never really know. But I think there's a lot of things you can do. Repeal the 1986 Vaccine Injury Court, which is really a wink, wink and a nod, nod to the big pharma industry, because it's almost impossible to even submit a claim. It's very cumbersome. And of course, they look for ways to deny those claims as well. So if he can do a lot of those things, change our food supply, change our water supply, make us more healthy, I think he can be an incredible and consequential Health and Human Services Secretary.
I completely agree with you. I worked a little bit with his campaign, and while I didn't formally endorse him for president, I just kept saying, this man needs to be in Washington. This brain, he needs to be looking at things. He's very good at unraveling complex systems and looking at adulterating influences on those systems. And God knows we have a lot of that. Josh, thanks for being here. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Anytime, any topic.
You got it. Excellent. That's good. I love that. Anytime, any topic. We will call on you again.
I want to talk about drones.
I figured. So if Susan gets, maybe you can have him on your show, Susan. You know what I mean?
Oh my God.
Yeah, it'd be interesting for him to throw some of the stuff he knows out to your peoples.
This time I thought, oh, they're just, it's the U.S. government. They're testing it. They're doing something. They're searching for something. And then I said, but it's probably China, because if you can't figure out what it is, it's got to be China. And I always joke when I say it.
Yep.
But the fact that he said that, I was just like, well,
Anytime, any topic. I like that.
Anytime.
So